It's fantastic to have with us in Scotland the Secretary General of the World Evangelical Alliance, Bishop Thomas Schirrmacher. And a great privilege, Thomas, to have you here. And we've had a great day meeting with church leaders and praying and hanging out with some of the Tier Fund folks. And a great opportunity for me just to ask you one or two questions.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
And it's also great to get your global perspective on things, because sometimes in any nation you get focused right down to what's happening in your own nation. So thank you for making the time for us. We're here in the midst of COP26 happening in Glasgow, 100,000 people marching over the weekend. What do you see as the role of evangelicals in the discussion around the environment and the whole COP movement?
Well, let me start out with asking the question why it concerns us at all. Because some people might say evangelicals should evangelize, so they should not even have it on their calendar. Even so, I have to admit that we are probably the religious body that has the largest number of people in the so-called blue zone. And I can tell you, because they're speaking about creation and the Creator, even so they didn't come for this, they are all evangelizing, whether they want it or not. But for me, creation care starts out very simple with us being created in the image of God, according to Genesis 1, yeah? For working. We have a working God. Yeah? He never sleeps. Yeah? And so He created us to work and not to sit around. And from the very beginning says to work means to change things, to plan things, and to preserve. Yeah? So, and this is in the whole Bible. We are stewards of creation. And God created us in His image that is so brilliant that we know how to destroy the earth. And we don't need climate change, we just need 10 of those nuclear weapons put at the right place and the world will not exist any longer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's genius to plan this. No dog, no fish ever could do this. Yeah. But He also made us stewards to use our brain to save this planet. Yeah. And when the whole world discusses about this, we believing that it's a part of being human. Yeah? Don't want to stand aside when the whole world sees the world at stake and wants to discuss what can we do about it. We bring our very special perspective, seeing this as a creation, and seeing the Creator, and seeing that our being steward is much more than doing this and doing that and buying a smaller car or whatever. It really has something to do with our most inner attitude. And do we love the creation because it's God's creation? Or is it just a technical matter? We have a car, we need to repair it, and now we demonstrate that the money should be paid for repairing it. No, we think it's God's creation, and we love God. We love the people living in it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Neighbor has become a very large term nowadays because everything is around the corner. Yeah? And I love this word of Jesus, because by loving all of this, we love ourselves. Yeah? And it will be ourselves. And yeah. Now, second, it is our national alliances that push us for being active in this area. Let's say Africa. Ethiopia builds a dam, and 4 or 5 countries have a climate change, definitely man-made. Yeah? And it hits everyone, including the churches. So you have to have an opinion on this. So how do we help our churches in the middle of this heated, emotional, political discussion to speak about creation care? Yeah? Which doesn't make you one-sided. In the sense you are either in favor or you are not. Yeah? The Aral Sea has gone to 3% of the water it had one day, and it's 11 national alliances that immediately are hit by the situation that the deserts are becoming bigger and bigger, especially in the Central Asia region. They press us for we want teaching on creation care. Let's go for it. So I think it is not just as a political topic. Evangelicals never agreed on political questions, but we agree upon that we are stewards and therefore we have to be there. And when the whole world discusses a matter like this, we have to be in the middle of the mess and not standing aside and watching and afterwards blaming people for what they have done.
So if we took that a little bit further, beyond the environment and here into matters of justice, areas such as both lives matter, other kind of areas in the world. Some people would say evangelicals should be simply preaching Christ crucified. Our job is simply to preach the gospel. Others would say that we need to engage, if not party politically, then certainly on behalf of the marginalised and the voiceless. What would be your reflections around the role of evangelicals in these wider issues of global justice? Where should we sit? And is there a divide between preaching the gospel and becoming engaged in issues of justice?
Well, number one, I would question from the very beginning whether it means not to preach the gospel if officially you don't put a sticker evangelism on it. Yeah? So I meet a lot of heads of states, top politicians, top business people, yeah, and the experience is by the latest when we are alone, yeah. It circles around God, about religion, about these convictions, yeah. And I see myself as an evangelist to leaders, yeah. And I can approach people because of the large body I represent, which other people cannot approach. So even in everyday life, I would question whether it's really so simple, yes. Yeah. And most of our evangelistic discussions start with a totally different topic. It's the exception. That you say, I want to talk about Jesus, and then people come and want to discuss with you. Yeah? But now, in more general, number one, we are doing things the Evangelical Alliance has been started for 1846. It was prayer, and you could say, why evangelize? We just pray. That's more important.
Yeah.
Yeah? They said prayer is the most important thing. Second comes the gospel, and we need to preach the gospel. Yeah? The other side of the gospel, and there we come into politics already, was religious freedom. Yeah? They said we are against the concept of state churches, of the state being involved, and even forcing people to be Christians. It's a personal, deep trust in God, which you cannot force. Yeah? A forced conversion is no conversion. That was their conviction. And it wrote history, and meanwhile, all Christian churches have the same position, that religious freedom is not just a nice political concept. But you cannot get Christianity without it. God does not want the state to decide on the beliefs, on the deepest conviction of humans. Yeah? So they are in the politics already. And then, of course, the movement was born out of the fight against slavery. If that was not politics. And here you can see how closely they are related. Amazing Grace, so to speak, our national anthem. Yeah? Yeah. You never hear it in a nicer version than with pipes here in Scotland. But it's the national anthems of the evangelical. Yeah? Amazing Grace. Is this the private Me and My Jesus song? Yeah? That the author personally did not understand why God gave him grace, like Paul? Or is it the former slave trader who does not understand why God gave him a second chance in his life so that he can work for the people he once enslaved or even who died because of his? So it's both.
Yes.
Out of this being freed as a slave himself, out of the slavery of sin, he became one of the foremost voices against slavery in reality. Yeah? And if you would have asked, say, Wilberforce, who was the central figure in all of this, is it about preaching the gospel or is it about politics? He would not have understood what you are talking about. He was an evangelist. He was very much engaged. He wanted the whole population in Britain to get to know Jesus better.
Yes.
Yeah? and was involved in politics. So, and then there is a very practical thing. Our churches altogether that belong to national alliances make up at least 600 million people. If you represent 600 million people, you are in the middle of politics. The UN wants to know what we think. I mean, global bodies want to what we think. Other religious communities will come to us. Can we cooperate? Can we not cooperate? 600 million, that's never a house Bible study group. It is politics.
Yes.
Yeah? And it's only the question, do we stand up for a non-corrupt, unbiased politics that works for the marginalized, that works against hunger, that works against corruption, etc. Or do you just want to sit around and watch the world how it's getting worse? Yeah, I think it's just the size, like it or not, it's just the size that forces us to be engaged in every problem in this world.
That's really helpful, thank you. I want to take that on a little bit. You mentioned kind of religious liberty, and I wanted to ask you about your perspective on persecution of Christians in the world, as in some places we've moved from centre to margins, and people have less understanding and are more suspicious of our story as Christians, than pressure on Christians to conform or be separated, which for some people results in persecution and loss and pain, seems to be growing in the world. What, as WEA, what is your perspective on what is happening within the world church in terms of persecution and marginalisation of Christians?
Well, number one, I could go through the same levels again. Number one is always prayer. And the 7th and the 14th November traditionally is the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church, run by the World Evangelical Alliance. And we have an amazing following around the world. By the way, a lot of churches outside WA use this chance to take one Sunday a year to preach about a topic that is related to it, get informed about situations. Yeah. So we start out not with politics, but with prayer. Yeah. Then we clearly have to see we are in the middle of the mess in this problem because we are evangelizing, and we can't say, okay, we can't follow Jesus, but if you get in problems, we are on a holiday. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So we automatically get in the next step to help those people. There have been times where working with the persecuted church meant to teach them how to inform the media in America or in the West. Yeah? And WA has been very instrumental to help the churches. When it's prayer, please inform yourself first. Assure that you have prayer networks in your countries. Inform your neighbor countries, those closest. Yeah? Organize all of this, and don't think that the Western media or Western politics will solve the problem. Yeah? So, and that you need something like WA, a global body, for this. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But then, of course, it comes to analyze what's actually going on. There are some people who say, it's very simple. Real believers come from countries where you have pressure and persecution. As a German, I have some problem with this, because communist Germany, Eastern Germany, within half a century got lost Christianity. Yeah? It's really gone, and even so the so-called reunification is 30 years ago, happened 30 years ago, it hasn't changed. Eastern Germany still is, sociologists tell us, is the most atheist part of the world at the moment. Yeah? So persecution, and it was not even a strong persecution, can wipe out the church. Yeah? And it has had in history, of course. The thing is the other way around. For whatever reason, I don't know God's plan. Yeah, I would like to understand. For some reasons, the church grows the fastest in areas where it is not invited and welcome. Yeah, in some areas like Scotland, or England, or Wales, Northern Ireland, or Germany, places where we had much freedom for some time. It's getting a little more complicated now, but we nevertheless did not grow. Yeah, so it would have been good to grow here, because We have an immense growth of the church in Iran, and that's probably the most stupid place to become a Christian.
Yes.
Yeah, but people become Christians. Yeah, and we have to live with the fact that the percentage of Christians that are under pressure, especially within the World Evangelical Alliance, is constantly growing, because the churches in those countries are growing. Yeah, so the problem will become bigger, at least for us. Yeah, and I think it's vital that we do not stop too early, but we take up this challenge. One challenge, for example, is for theology. I think Western countries for too long have had a nice theology, and I'm speaking of what we call theology proper, speaking about God. Jesus is the martyr, and that should be part of systematic theology. You cannot speak about Jesus as the Son of God and Son of Man, yeah, without speaking about that he was a martyr. Let me take the example of Islam. In Islam, a prophet always wins. It's a religion made for winners. The Bible tells us if you are a good prophet, you will be killed. Yeah, that is the sign of being a prophet, and it even happened to the Son of God. And that never brings us to the point that we seek martyrdom. Yeah, but I think we have to come away from the view that living in a Western country, nice and wealthy and is the standard. No, we have to help those in the persecuted churches. It's the other way around. The Bible tells us that is the standard, that is the normal thing, and we have to be extremely thankful that this is not the case in our countries. Yeah, at least was for a long time. And now the areas where we get under pressure, but it still is compared to other countries. Yeah, it's incredible how many believers we have in Saudi Arabia. We cannot publicly speak about it. Yeah, but they are there, and some people speak about that the Middle East will be void of Christians. To be frank, for every historic Christian that leaves the Middle East, and we are very much helping them, we are not against them, but for everyone leaving, we get 2 or 3 new believers in the undercount. Christianity is not leaving the Middle East. Yeah? It's returning to a form that has been standard in the Middle East for a long time, under all kinds of powers. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. So, yes, some of the people who have had the biggest impact on my own life and journey of discipleship are people who've come from countries where they've been under pressure as church and underground as church, and I have the privilege of being the prayer director of Evangelical Alliance for the UK. So I've met with several people whose holiness and commitment to Christ is just reflected in everything they say and do. So thank you so much for that. One last question to you is simply, if you had a thought or a message to leave with the UK Evangelicals at this moment, kind of looking forward from what you see, what would that be?
Well, as you know, the whole idea of an alliance was originally started in the UK, and it came in a double pack. That is from priests of the Anglican Church with their version of church-state relation, and from pastors of the Church of Scotland from a Presbyterian background. And those mainline church leaders reached out to the newest movements on the market. And I think it is vital that the UK understands this anew and becomes a model for this reaching out over from the old historic churches, from the Reformation to the church, the independent church, started yesterday, being proud that it is an independent church. Yeah. I think the UK has the potential. The UK has still a huge evangelical, following in the historic churches. Yeah, And I think that especially as many of those connections to the former British Empire are there, the UK has more influence than they think on how alliances in countries whose churches were planted from the UK of 200 years ago, 100 years ago, how they manage this. Yeah? The Evangelical Alliance is about unity. We don't represent evangelicals, we represent evangelicals that want unity. There are other evangelicals who don't want it,
Yes.
and we can't speak for them. Yeah? And this unity has to be thought as broad as possible. Yeah? And this is what happened here on your island, or your islands. It went on to then Germany, France, Switzerland, to other European countries, but already 1857 to Turkey, and the Evangelical Alliance in Turkey is still around. And it's also mainline church Christians and very, very new movements at the same time. And this is our strength, I think. It's not that just Baptists and Pentecostals work together, or Lutherans and Anglicans in another camp, but that we bridge movements that for a lot of reasons normally and automatically don't have much to do with each other. That is our strength, your country is a visible example for this in history, and it has all the potential to show this to other countries again. If I think of the Alpha Course, it's a typical example. Yeah, it comes from a mainline church, but at the same time involves, how to say, a charismatic background, which is really more a very modern influence. Yeah, and it is not first of all seen as our branding for this and this, but it's a present to all churches. Yeah, and so in Germany, just all the churches, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Evangelical, Charismatic, Pentecostal, they all decided to use the Alpha Course as the default way to teach Christianity to Muslims that want to become Christians and normally want to be baptized first and then get to hear about it. And there is this decision which the government was very interested in, not to do this too quickly. It's the Alpha Course, yeah, and that's a good example how an idea from the United Kingdom spread through the whole world because it wanted to go for unity in the very basics, the essence of Christianity, and by surprise, it's used far beyond our own community. And I think that's not a mistake. That is what we are going for. Yeah? We want to bless the whole world, and we want to bless the whole body of Christ, not just our own community.
It's been a great privilege to have you with us today, and I know for the next couple of days. And may the Lord bless you as you seek to serve Him in the calling that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.